Hello, Islam Debate. Brian Speranza 5785. I'm going to get right to the point. Um, no topics were established. Your video was in response to my video where I stated fairly clearly why I'm not a Muslim. You enjoined, you used the example of red herring, and then you turned right around and put out a red herring. Your red herring being you want me to define perfect love, which could take eons. We're still trying to define it in our own limited way of understanding love as human beings. And you couch it in a question saying that God hates sinners. Okay. If God hates, then he is not perfect love. Forcing me to define perfect love and then refute your statement that hatred by God against those who do not love perfectly is justified. That's the red herring. So thanks for the object lesson. Much obliged. Um, Naturally, God is going to come in opposition to those who would want to hate and damage and deliberately come against and transgress against His law. Jesus summed up the law himself. Love your neighbor. I mean, love love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, body, and soul, everything you can, and love your neighbor as yourself. So in defining the law, in defining this, God pretty much states what is hate, what is not hate. We'll leave the categorizations up to others. You beg me to give you the context of certain verses, such as Psalm 11:5 and Psalm 5:5. Those are the ones that you mentioned. Then you extend that over to Job 26:11. Psalm 5:5 and Psalm 11:5 does teach, and I'll concede this point to you, does teach that God hates sinners. But God can hate sinners without violating his own law, his own nature, which is love. Once again, your red herring pokes up its ugly head, and I'll just let it drop at that point. Job 26:11 is what you're quoting. Let's go to Job 26:11. The entire verse reads, "The pillars of heaven tremble and are amazed at his rebuke." If you go to the first verse of chapter 26 of the book of Job, it states, "Then Job responded." Job is responding to someone, to one of the companions during Job's sufferings, that encourages him to reject God. So, really, that isn't a statement of structure, that's not a structural statement of how heaven is built. That's actually a metaphor that Job is using. Job is telling his companion, the pillars of heaven are trembling right now at his rebuke of you. If you read, the context simply involves backing up a few verses, reading from that verse, catching the verse in context, understanding what happened before and what happens afterwards. That's all that it is. It's not that difficult. You don't need a tafsir to understand it. Once again, you engage in another tactic here, which is interesting. You ask one question verbally, and yet another question is written, implying that the two questions are related, or relating the two questions artificially. First question that you relate verbally: did the Jews who killed Jesus do God's will in killing Jesus and are therefore righteous? On the screen, in written form, you ask the question: in Jesus coming to earth just to die for our sins, did he not in fact commit suicide by extension? Those are two separate issues. They're two entirely separate issues. Start with the first question. The Jews did not kill Jesus. They referred Jesus to Pontius Pilate for crucifixion on the charge of blasphemy. Jesus stated the truth. He is God. He stated that unequivocally in front of the Sanhedrin. So the Sanhedrin reacted, first angrily. They tore their clothes and they struck him with fists, and You can read the story about that in the Injil yourself. So initially, since the Jews didn't directly kill Jesus, but rather asked Pontius Pilate, and Pontius Pilate resisted, that question goes away. Jesus dying for our sins as a condition of his alleged suicide, by extension. First of all, Jesus came to this planet to restore relationship between creator and created. I was very clear in that statement. This is a mistake of category. It's an error of category. Islam does not teach that we can have relationship, direct relationship with God. Prayer for a Muslim is a 5-time-a-day ceremony. It's an act of submission to the will of Allah. For me, prayer, when I pray to God, I'm talking to him. I've said that before, and I've made that point. Jesus' sacrifice on the cross removed the barrier to that, removed my sin. He took my sin nature out of the equation by covering me with a protection. He took the penalty of that sin. Jesus took the penalty of that sin so that God would not have to throw me out of his presence out of wrath for my sin nature. That is the purpose for the death and resurrection of Jesus. That's heavily oversimplified, but that's the purpose. That's what you're calling dying for my sins. Now, the definition of suicide means a desire to kill oneself. If that's the case, then why didn't Jesus just off himself as soon as he became aware of his divinity, which happened at a fairly early age? That's not suicide. Your final point. Produce a surah like it. I think I summed it up. How could the Quran have come from man? That question is really irrelevant to its divine origin. We see and that's another red herring that I could go on and on and on about. I won't. I'll just finish by doing this. The First Corinthians 13th chapter, beginning at verse 4. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast. It is not proud, it is not rude. It is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. I hope you will join me on a search for truth, my friend. I've simply pointed out to you further debate craft, further games that are being played, and you'll respond by accusing me of the same. This is why I don't want to debate you, my friend. I seek the truth. I'm commanded to seek the truth by my holy book, by the Bible. I wish you peace. I wish you blessings. Good Lord, I will be praying for you.